Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, how can Uganda become more competitive as an investment destination in spite of the current economic turbulence? Tomorrow, a high-level forum to discuss how Uganda can become more competitive as an investment destination will open under the theme Mainstreaming Competitiveness as a driver of growth and prosperity. In line with this theme, the forum will discuss measures to improve the competitiveness of key sectors of the economy that will be vital for growth of the economy and ensuring prosperity. Currently, the Ugandan economy is undergoing challenges with inflation rising rapidly, worsened by a decline in the level of production and the volume of exports. Uganda desperately needs investors to inject capital in key sectors vital for the economy's recovery. In order to attract such investors, the country needs to have a competitive edge over other regional countries that are also targeting the same investors. Uganda, though, has several bottlenecks that have been highlighted in several policy documents and international publications, including the Doing Business Index of the World Bank. So tonight we ask, how can Uganda deal with these challenges so as to attract more investments at a time when the country is also facing tough challenges with its economy? Also, what advice can the experts who are part of this forum give the country to deal with the current crisis and also be more competitive, taking into account the regional competition? Now, these and more questions will form the base of our discussion on Spectrum. Tonight, our guests, Mr. Eric Kacou, co-founder of ES Partners and author of Entrepreneurial Solutions for Prosperity, which looks about escaping the survival trap. We'll hear more about the survival trap. You're most welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Edmond.
We're also joined by Mr. Allon Raiz, founder and chief executive of Raizcorp. Raizcorp is the only UN-funded profitable business incubator on the African continent, supporting more than 240 businesses. You're most welcome, Allon.
Thank you so much, Edmond.
We're also joined by Dr. Peter Ngategize, the national coordinator of the Competitiveness and Investment Climate Strategy Secretariat. You're most welcome, Dr. Ngategize.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Dr. Ngategize, tomorrow the 5th Competitiveness Forum, which you coordinate, will open in Kampala. Can you give us a background about this forum?
Well, maybe I could start as way back as the 90s, following the stance of government, of the new government of the NRM, with respect to the policies of liberalization, privatization, decentralization, and the like, which basically brought impetus into the economy, supported by the return of security within the country. But as we moved on, as we got into the latter part of the 90s, there started to be concerns about the policy stance we're having in terms of liberalization, privatization. The question was, what is this private sector? How do we empower this private sector? Aren't we giving it too much? And the first competitiveness strategy basically was came in 2000, covering 5 years, 2000-2005. As we moved on, the issues of concern started to change. We started thinking about competitiveness, which essentially is about productivity and how you ensure you create an environment that allows for the necessary efficiencies and productivity to make the economy grow, create jobs, create exports. Now, annually, in order to basically collect ideas and views from a cross spectrum of people within the country, we've been over the last 5 years holding an annual forum, a competitiveness forum, and this will be our 5th competitiveness forum. The purpose of this basically is to generate ideas that will feed into the next budget. This month we shall start the budget process for 2012-2013. Secondly, it's going to be a process basically that where we will launch the next competitiveness strategy 2011-2015, which basically will help be part of the strategies or frameworks to operationalize the National Development Plan. So we look at this strategy as very critical for the next 5 years, and we are comforted by the fact that it has been designed at a time when indeed, as you have said, Uganda is facing challenges. But for every challenge, there is an opportunity. So we look forward to very fruitful forum.
So when you talk about competitiveness at the macro level as a concept, what exactly are you talking about?
Well, if you are talking about the macro level, then as you have just said yourself, it's about having a country that basically provides opportunities for investors to have an interest in the country, basically for people to be able to come and be able to produce and make money. So attracting foreign investment is part of it as we talk about a country. It also means that compared, say, to the region, having a business environment that basically affords low costs of doing business, that makes it easy for people to do what they are doing. But in the context that we are moving towards, is really we are talking about the productivity of the resources we have, the labor productivity, and that's where we have a challenge. The use of how we apply the resources we have in this country, basically to generate value, which value is going to generate us the prosperity that we are all looking for.
All right, of course, you're talking about excellence in management of resources. I'd like you to talk to us about that later in this program. For now, Eric, can you talk to us a little bit about this survival trap? What exactly is it?
Yes, so the survival trap is actually a concept that I came up with, which to me speaks to the reality of the average citizen in our countries. I was born and raised in Côte d'Ivoire, and I spent most of my years as a high school student going back to the village over the summers. And I could not help but notice how the level of poverty was increasing year over year. Things got so difficult that at some point, people were forced to use cubes, bouillon cubes in the stew to remember the taste of fish or meat. And I think that level of poverty is something that we may not necessarily see in Kampala, but it is something that is real. When we think about competitiveness, we have to be able to bring it back to the day-to-day challenges that every young Ugandan, and God knows that most of the population here is under the age of 21, every young Ugandan struggles with. So when I talk about the survival trap, I talk about a vicious cycle where the situations becomes so challenging that we focus on short-term solutions as opposed to thinking about ways in which we can change the environment in which we live. And I believe it is Einstein that said that the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And I would offer that, unfortunately, the survival trap can often make us do things that don't make sense just because we have to survive. And it is really something that we have to pay attention to, because it's really critical if we are going to be able to enable the average citizen in Uganda to move forward. And this is really the goal of the government as stated in the National Development Plan.
And that's at the individual level. How about the corporate level?
You know, what's interesting is that the individual is, if you will, if I can use that term, the main raw material into all the institutions. I mean, when individuals are struggling, it's difficult for businesses to do well. I mean, the implication there is that the markets that you have are few and far between. People sort of pay you late. You don't have the human resources that you need. So that would, of course, impact the quality of the businesses that are there. It also has an implication for government. What it means is that the resources that government needs to finance its vision to really make life better for the average citizen may not be there, in as much as tax revenues don't really match what's there, and it really impacts the whole world as well. I mean, we only have to look at the situation in Greece, in Iceland, in Ireland, other countries which have gone bankrupt. I mean, a country like Spain, where youth unemployment is at 60%. I mean, a country like the UK, you know, where you had riots. I mean, so we live in a time when the survival trap is really gripping the whole world. The good news for Uganda, though, is that, as Dr. Ngategize said, the Competitiveness and Investment Climate Secretariat has spent quite a bit of time thinking about what can we do practically, what can we do tomorrow to help make those problems go away. And I'm hoping that through the forum tomorrow and beyond the forum, we can begin sort of acting on some of those specific actions.
And of course, when you talk about a country like Spain, Spain has an economy that's bigger than Africa's and a population that's only the size of Tanzania, 34 million people. So if they can't get into trouble with such a large economy and high GDP, those are lessons we really need.
Edmond, I really, really like the way you look at it, because look, why are all these countries getting into trouble? My sense is that they're getting into trouble because the mindset that we are bringing to the challenges that we are facing is not the right one. And until we are willing to upgrade our software, it's going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, for us to move forward. And I could go into the details of what I mean by upgrading the software, but this is also something that Allon will talk about quite a bit when he talks about what we have to do at the enterprise development level. How do we create the next generation of entrepreneurs? Because I think in the end of it all, it's going to be difficult for the government to be the provider that it used to be. We are entering an era where we have to equip the average citizen to really create the solutions and products that will help them improve their lives. And unfortunately, not everyone can start a business, not everyone can be an entrepreneur. But if we can create a class of entrepreneur that's strong enough, that will create the conditions for us to escape the survival trap.
I'd like you to talk to us about the mindset later. First of all, though, Allon, can you talk to us about your company? You're the founder and CEO of Raizcorp. What exactly is it?
Before I respond to that, I have to make a correction. I'm not UN funded, I'm unfunded.
Unfunded. Go on.
It's a private sector business incubator. No problem. So what we do is we have 7 operations in South Africa, 1 in Angola, and we take entrepreneurs through a very rigorous selection process. 1 in 20 will get in. And then we back them to the hilt by providing them with physical infrastructure if they need it, by providing them with personnel, people to do their books, people to answer their phone. Then we provide them high quality learning. We're a university faculty, so we've developed very pragmatic, practical entrepreneurial training. And then we provide them with a team of 5 what we call guides, which you might call mentors, but it's slightly different. A strategy guide, a finance guide, a sales guide, a marketing guide, and a personal development guide. These are 5 people that work with each entrepreneur on a one-on-one basis and take them through that journey, that very difficult journey as an entrepreneur. Then we also have linkages with corporates and with business where we provide markets for those businesses. So we open the door for them. You might have heard that Walmart is entering this continent.
It's already in South Africa.
Yeah, and we've just done a deal with them that all our companies, for example, have preferential access into the Walmart group as suppliers. So we will go and do big deals on their behalf from a supply point of view. And then finally, we also within the sales context, there's a huge internal market where the companies sell to one another, and there's a huge internal economy going on. So any new business that enters our program effectively has direct access to 240 other businesses immediately. And there's a great sense of community in that environment. So that's what incubation is in the way that we do it.
And at what level do you trap them?
Trap them?
Well, at what level do you attract them?
Attract them. We've got different programs. Our mainstay program is where they are post-startup, so they're at least 6 months in operation.
6 months in operation?
Yeah.
What levels?
No, they have to do a minimum turnover. It's not a lot. And they have to be 100% in the business. They can't be working on the side and doing this on the side. So if they're 6 months in the business, there's a minimal turnover, and they're executive in the business, and they're 18 years and older, we'll engage them.
And most of the people that you deal with, what's the profile?
The profile is youth, predominantly youth. 80% are youth. So it's sort of 18 to 35 is sort of the 80% live in that category. And we've got wonderful success stories with businesses. People come as one-woman bands, and 3-4 years later they are running very successful businesses with 25-30 people working for them. They're multimillionaires. And we have these stories all over the place. We have had many of our entrepreneurs also on CNN and various international media, and great exposure for them as well. So it's very exciting to be in this business.
Dr. Ngategize, give us a little bit more detail about this competitiveness. How practical is it when you talk about introducing it in the public sector and the private sector? How do you do it?
Well, part of it is as basically improving service delivery, which basically means getting most value from the resources you have, from the workers, employees that you have, which means possibly setting targets, which means working on time, keeping time, setting targets, evaluating this, and basically having incentives and sanctions for the deliveries of these outputs that you are getting out of people. The other one, it also basically means about government being realistic about the services that they can provide better or well, or that actually they should provide in the public domain, public goods basically, and prioritizing those against those where private sector or partnership with the private sector can deliver. It's quite a number of things that can help improve service delivery within the public sector.
Briefly, you talk about basically excellence. How do you apply it in the context of the civil service, for instance?
Well, I think, as you know, in the civil service, I think it's in the 90s when there was public sector reforms. I would argue that actually time is ripe for Uganda to undergo another public service reform exercise, looking at the institutions to avoid duplication in terms of mandates, revisiting roles and responsibilities. Just like in the 90s, there was a reflection about let's get out of buying maize and having silos and the like, getting out of rationing dollars and the like. We have another phase here where we can start really looking at, take an example of Aaron's case of incubations. We still have the few incubators we have within the country lie in the public domain. But he's telling you now that you can have an unfunded but profitable enterprise in the incubation sector. So that's an innovation. That's something that we may want to learn from, so that then we have more resources for the roads, for the electricity, and the services that we have, and then improve the efficiencies in the areas we have. The other one, which is also basic, that we still have opportunity to tap into, is basically use of ICT. Why don't we have all these registration forms online, and you just print and you do a few things, do it. URA, payment of taxes, is being done in this way, although the people still have challenges in terms of access and basically ability to use, but we can scale up these skills and the outreach of the technology to make sure we take advantage of this and improve basically our competitiveness. And around that is also mindset. We have always done it this way, so we do it this way. So you have to think about how do you change the mindsets for us to see that, one, those incubation services can be offered in the framework that we are being told today, and also shift to having forms, being able to print them anywhere, being able to access databases, so that if you want to register a company, Edmond Limited, you want to figure out whether there is another one already there, you go into online and deal with it. So we have areas within the public domain that basically would want to mainstream within our public sector, and that is one of the messages that we are offering.
Eric, I'd like you to talk to us about the mindset change that you mentioned earlier, but also can you give us some of the priorities that you think Uganda's competitiveness can be leveraged?
Yeah, so I think I want to really sort of take the perspective of somebody who had the privilege of facilitating the development of the upcoming Competitiveness and Investment Climate Strategy. So this is actually work that was done by a task force, which included a number of stakeholders under the leadership of PSFU. But you had people from government, development partners, you had, donors like the EU and Danida quite involved. So it really brought together, people from all walks of life to look at this issue of how do we operationalize aspect of the National Development Plan. So the government has a vision to create prosperity for the average citizen in this country. And there are a number of programs that have already been put in place. But how do we really create the conditions for growth to really flourish? And what the priorities are that the task force came up with were basically 5. The first one was this issue of mindset, right? So you're saying, what do we mean by mindset? What's happening? If I am going to simplify it, I would say that most of the actions that we take produce the results that we have. So basically, if somebody is saving quite a bit and one day they are able to buy a plot of land and build a home, it is because they were able to save, right? For them to be able to save, they had to have a mindset which told them that, you know what, I can go and have a beer tonight, or I can have a big wedding, or I can maybe put some money in a cooperative bank, because if I can do that, I can have a sort of down payment for a home. So what we must look at, what we must confront, is that some of the mindsets that we hold, whether at an individual, company, government, or national level, have an implication on the actions that we take, and therefore influence the results that we have. So in this particular strategy, what we are talking about is to put in place very practical programs like the ones that Peter described, which are going to help us shape some of those mindsets. And there, we don't want to forget the youth, because it's one thing for us to try and change the mindsets of people like, you and I, and it is another thing for us to target the youth who are the Uganda of tomorrow. I think that's really something important. The second aspect, which is also a priority, is how do we grow clusters? How do we grow product and services which are going to create jobs and generate the type of receipts that the country need in order to prosper? And there was quite a bit of analysis that was done. There were basically 7 of those clusters that were identified. Some of them were in agriculture, others in services. I'm not going to go through the details now, but for all of them, they were selected by the task force because there was a sense that they could create jobs. There was a sense that they would bring us exports. There was a sense that they would really help us solve the problems that we have. The third aspect, which is critical, which is something that Allon has mentioned, is that those products don't happen by accident.
Yes.
You need businesses that are there, which have the capacity to deliver on those products. Today we had a chance to visit a couple of centers here who are working with young graduates. Some of them are producing fruit juices, some of them are, more developed. One of them was actually producing a vaccine. But you need such businesses. So how do we develop enterprise? This is where the whole issue around enterprise development comes in. The next priority is about the environment. Peter talked about the doing business survey and how do we create the ecosystem for the businesses to flow. And then if we're going to have all of this, it's one thing for us to have priorities, we have to have them implemented. Right. So what the task force said was the 5th priority should be to create the conditions for everything to be implemented. And it means that everybody in Uganda has to understand that they have a role to play in making competitiveness happen, and they have to really play that role. So in a nutshell, those are the priorities that were identified, and this will be discussed tomorrow.
This is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight. How can Uganda become more competitive as an investment destination in spite of the current economic turbulence? So I'll go for a break. When we come back, we'll look at examples from other places. Rwanda, South Africa. Do stay tuned.
Let the sunlight in. Good morning, sunshine of my life. You look happy today.
I am. I came in here and I saw there was a whole pile of washing to do.
But I felt you didn't like doing the washing.
No, I love it. Anything else you need washed?
Sunlight 2-in-1 with added fabric softener. Smells so good, you want to use it again and again.
Let the sunlight in.
Sunlight 2-in-1. Sunlight clean, sunlight fresh.
Sunlight in. Happiness is all around. Let the sunlight in.
Is your internet provider turning your world upside down? Broadband Company offers fast and reliable internet solutions. And for the first 100 subscribers this month, we offer zero connection fees. Save up to 400,000. For more information on these offers, call toll-free 0800 222 111.
Broadband Company, more than you expect.